and VK5GA. He'll be talking to us about the satellites, and unfortunately we don't have a pass tonight that we can demonstrate, but I'll hand it over to Adam. Thank you very much for coming, and welcome.
Thank you. I suppose once all the stuff comes up on the screen for the presentation, I'll give you a bit of a rundown. It's only going to be a very basics tonight, just a starter guide as I've got it on the thing, on the presentation. So just to make it as easy intro for new people into satellites, if they want to do anything down that track. I can supply the presentation for online afterwards if anybody wants it. There's some live links that are in there that you can click on as well. So I suppose I'll give you a bit of an intro on me. Been licensed since 1991 back in Victoria. That's where it all sort of started with the satellite stuff, actually, up in the top right-hand corner there with the AR magazine. You should be able to find me in there somewhere in that one. That was my first intro into it. That was actually a space shuttle school pass that we were involved with. Mind you, have a read if you're able to find it. I can't remember the year, the month, but it was in 91, early 91, before I was licensed. So it was a very good experience there and got me really enthused into it. I was licensed as VK3YAG back then for the first part of it, and then moved around with work through VK2, VK6, and back to VK2, and then now to VK5. So I've done a little bit of the countryside there. Been lucky enough to hold the last two times the GA on the end for VK6 and VK5. So very lucky. Anyway, we'll get started into it, and with the first slide, and with it all, going to look at terminology with it, bit of the history, not too in depth at all by any means with it. Different types of satellite types that are around for amateur radio use. Also, what do you need to at least get started as well. Look at the active FM satellites at the moment and some of the awards that I've got over time. I did have a demo down. The pass that is that we're going to miss is at 10. I think it's 10 to 10 tonight here in Adelaide. So it was just that little bit too late there. I don't know if there'll be anybody around, but got a few hands in the crowd. Yeah. So, but all right, we'll head on to the next slide there. So terminology, nice easy ones. Oscar, which is a pretty easy one, orbiting satellite carrying amateur radio. Low Earth orbit for LEO. HEO for high elliptical orbit or high Earth orbit. They sort of used interchangeably. The geosynchronous equatorial orbit for the geo, acquisition of signal. So when the satellite is actually coming up over the horizon, and loss of signal, which is with the actual satellite going down over the other horizon as it goes into the distance. Also, Doppler shift. Just going to look at the very basics of that as well, just to sort of give people an idea if you haven't had any sort of exposure to it. So the change in frequency due to the speed of the satellite and also where you are as well. All right, orbits. The different types of orbits there that we got. As I had, LEO, HEO, and GEO. You can see off in on that right-hand side, it gives you a little bit of an idea with the different types of orbits there. Most of the stuff for the amateur stuff at the moment is LEO. We do have one geosynchronous one at the moment, but we don't have, in Australia, we don't have access to it. It's all over the Middle East and Europe and a little bit into, I think it's Christmas Island. That's about it. Cocos, is it? Cocos. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I couldn't remember if it was Christmas or Cocos, one of the two. Yeah, it's not very high. So that gives you an idea of where they are. So for your LEO, you're looking about 10 to 15 minutes max. Most of the time it is a little bit less that you've got with that pass. So you got to sort of set yourself up, prepare yourself ready for that, for the pass when it comes over. Whereas your high orbiting ones, for your GEO and your HEO ones, you don't have to prepare as much with that, but you need to have a lot better gear with it all, But all I'm looking at for tonight is the LEO satellites, because they're nice and easy, fairly easy to get in contact with. All right, the Doppler effect. I'm not going to read out what's up there, but you have a look at the little picture. It should tell you sort of roughly what it is. I'm going to read out my little spiel that I had here. What's it? As a satellite approaches, the frequency of its transmitter appears to be higher than its actual transmission frequency as it comes in at the start. So acquisition of signal. So it's going to look like it's higher in frequency. So we'll have a center frequency and it'll look like it's actually higher in frequency from there. As it goes through the pass, through to the center, it'll actually go closer to that center frequency. Then as it goes away from you, it will then go lower in, or it'll look like it's going lower in frequency. So that's about the basic side of it. So as it's coming up over acquisition of signal, it'll look like it's actually higher in frequency than it should be. You're starting off there, then you work your frequency through down in lower, all the way down to below what the center frequency would be for the satellite. And it goes the same for the other non-FM satellites as well. Same sort of deal with it all. All right, the history side. I tried to make it as, give a little bit, but not too much. You can sort of get bogged down in it a fair bit. I suppose the reference point I had in my notes was Sputnik, launched in 1957. So Sputnik launching in 1957, the first amateur radio one, 1961. So it's not too far behind when you look at it. So from the amateur radio side, we've been doing it not long after the first satellite was actually launched. So we've been involved in a lot in that time. I suppose of note is Oscar 5 for us here in Australia. That was an Australian built one done by Melbourne University, or University of Melbourne, I should say. They did one there back in, they built it in 1969, and then it was launched at the very start of 1970. So that sort of gives you an idea from that point, from when Sputnik happened, and then Australia actually got to launch their first one there into orbit for a amateur radio one. So that's pretty good. We didn't launch it here physically out of Australia. It was actually done over in the US out of Vandenberg. So one at the moment, Oscar 7, it's still alive. It went through a couple of different stages. It died, come back to life. Works really well, surprisingly. It's not an FM satellite, but it's surprisingly, it works really well when it's got sunlight on it, because it only works in sunlight. Oscar 10, as it's got there, first of the phase 3B, high Earth orbit one. So that was the first of the ones that you could actually work other countries. So there was a lot of people when that came out that were working, they could actually work DXCC. They were getting that at that point. So that's why these nice high Earth orbit ones are really good. But same thing, it's not a FM one. So it's sort of getting into that next stage. Oscar 16, as I put there, the first FM transponder. So it was, you look at that 1990, so there's a fair amount of time, but FM, I don't know when people got their first FM handheld for a 2 meter rig. Might have been early 80s, maybe mid 80s, but they were fairly expensive. You know, they got the first FM transponder going then. It was a packet one. So it was actually a forwarding type arrangement. So it worked really well for guys using packet, which I was surprised. I got to see a little bit of that when I first started. So it sort of pricked my ears up when I was young. Oscar 27, 93, voice one. So not long after the first transponder one for FM, and then we get into an actual voice one. So it's not too long after that. Then there was successive FM ones after that, worked really well, but they didn't have a long lifetime on them. They seemed to die after a while. They weren't really made to stay up there for any length of time. Along comes Oscar 40. That was another phase 3 one. It was a bit of it had some issues with it, but it did work. It was pretty good. Same sort of deal as Oscar 10. They're very similar in that people were working DXCC and all that through satellites. So it was pretty good. I suppose of note, with the pictures on the right-hand side, that very top one is Oscar 1, the person holding it there, if you haven't seen that before. So you can sort of see how big it was. It wasn't that big at all. So whereas the Oscar 10, which is in the center, and Oscar 40 down the bottom, they were pretty big satellites, very big. They actually had propulsion systems in them and all the rest of it there as well. All right, start getting into satellites that have actually starting to have a lot more reliability. Oscar 50 was a good one. It's still working now. That's the one that I was hoping that we might have been able to do a demo, but after this, but it's going to be a little bit of time after the presentation, but we'll see how we go here anyway. It works really well. It doesn't have a massive footprint that you can work. You can work from Perth to Sydney, no issues, but they're very low elevation passes. So you can do it. You can work those ones. I have done it personally myself. So Oscar 73, done by the UK. So they built one there to try and get people into satellites again, trying to get people into it all. That's where they actually come up with their first SDR dongle to try and get the SDR side going as well as satellites. So they built this, the Oscar 73. It still works. It's still up and going, but it's not an FM one. So the FM ones are a little bit harder to, I suppose, for the engineering side, bit harder to do than the actual, the SSB ones. Oscar 91 is a good one. It seemed to work pretty well. The US had basically had a whole heap of Oscars in a row. I think it was 91, 92, and 93. They all worked for a period of time and then died. 91's the only one that is sort of, it still seems to be working at times, but it's limited. So I put in their AO51. AO51 was a actual really good satellite as well, up until it died back at the end of 2011. That was a very consistent satellite, FM satellite, that you had basically a 2-hour window at certain times of the day, so it wouldn't change because of the orbit that it actually had. So it was consistent within a 2-hour window. Really good satellite to use. I used a lot out in the outback when I was doing some traveling. I could always be pretty consistent with getting on the actual system. Oscar 100, the little graphic off to the side is the actual area that it covers. So you can sort of see the green area is, I think, it's got 10 degrees. And the other one, the red, is 5 degrees. The 5 degrees area, that's where we mention about Cocos Island in that sort of region. It's about that area there. So it's it's workable, but it is low to the horizon to try and work it. But you can see the area that it covers, the amount of countries that you could work by using that satellite. So, and that's a geostationary. All right, we'll get into the satellite type. So I've sort of spoke about the FM transponders already. They're pretty easy. It's the same as a repeater, is the basics of it. The only difference is it's not on the same band. So you don't have, it's not VHF up and VHF down for like you would have with a normal repeater of 600 kilohertz offset. What they do, so they don't have to have filters in the actual, satellite, they do a crossband. So they'll have VHF and UHF in it. So they'll have differing bands in it. Most of the time for FM ones, they use a lot of VHF and UHF because it's easy to get a hold of, very cost effective with it. There has been ones with 23 centimeters there as well. So, but most of the time is 2 meters and 70. So for getting equipment at the moment is pretty easy to get a hold of with that sort of stuff. As I've tried to put a little bit of information at the bottom so you could sort of, to do with the Doppler shift side, it's to give you an idea. I've set the, with the frequencies that are there for the uplink and downlink. So the SO50 with this one, so you got your uplink on 2 meters and then your downlink on 70. So with that, you're going to have the Doppler is going to be more affected on the higher frequency on the UHF side. So that's the one where you're going to have to actually change the frequency of the radio to be able to hear what's coming down from it. So the uplink side, you can leave it there because it's nice FM, analog FM. So because you normally got about 5 kilohertz, and because the frequency change on 2 meters isn't that much, you can actually get away with not having to use any change in frequency for the uplink on this for it. So it works really well from that aspect, that you only got to have one, the radio that you're listening on downlink is the one that you're going to have to change the frequency, and that's it. So you're not going to have to worry about the uplink side. If you're lucky enough, you might have a radio that does do both and does them simultaneously, that you can actually hear yourself. So it's not too bad. It's not too daunting. So with that, and you only got to set it up, and like I've got it here with the handhelds. You can have 2 handhelds with antennas, no issues at all. So your handhelds will work. 5 watts is plenty. Absolutely plenty. I've worked it with less. So with FM. All right, the next one, looking at digital satellites. This is one that anybody can get into with this side of it. You can actually receive it, receive all the information, telemetry, everything from the satellite. So if you want to get into that, the SDRs, the little SDR dongles, you can get into listening to all the digital stuff. It's really easy. So you can do with packet radio, You've got the APRS, you've got slow scan TV. There's a whole multitude of different things you can do there. And all you have to do is have a vertical antenna. You can do it with a quarter wave ground plane antenna and do digital with listening to it. So it's pretty easy because it's all on 2 meters. A lot of it's on 2 meters. Some of the satellites do use UHF. Better if you can get something with a little bit of gain, not too much. You can listen, you can hear a lot of stuff as well with for the telemetry side as well. With that, as I've got there, I've got 145.825. That's the main APRS frequency for a lot of your satellites that are out there for it. For the ISS, with the slow scan, they usually use their voice frequency. So they'll alternate between doing voice or doing slow scan TV in that aspect. So that's another one there. The linear transponders. I think this is what everybody sort of, when they think about satellites, I think everybody thinks about linear satellites when they're looking at it. They're going, oh, it's just so hard. I need a single sideband transceiver. I need a big setup and all this. I need big antennas. That's basically what you're looking at for your linear transponders. You're looking at a little bit of a bigger setup. That's where I think people sort of they see that and think, oh, it's going to be too hard. But start out in the FM satellite side, get used to that, work your way up to it. It becomes pretty easy after a while with all that. As I've tried to put at least a graphic there of it, where it's got the uplink and the downlink. And with this, you can actually use that whole area. You don't actually have to be stuck in the middle and using that whole area. Whereas an FM1, you'll use that whole band of that whole frequency range. Whereas on the SSB, you can actually do digital in one spot, do CW and voice in there as well. Because it's a lot wider, as it's got there 20 kilohertz up to 100. Most of them are closer to the 50 to 100 for it. So you can sort of cover a fair area and you can fit a lot into that area as well. So, all right, the active ones. I've spoken about already a couple of them. Got SO50 in there, the ISS with it. It's actually pretty good. As I've got there with 101, there's information on Twitter there with it for the actual name of the actual satellite. I've got no idea how to pronounce it, but it's I think it's done by the Philippines with that satellite. Some of the northern part of Australia will have access to that satellite because they only turn it on while it comes over their area. So to the northern part, so if you're in probably northern New South Wales or even southern Queensland, or in Northern Territory or the northern part of WA, you might have access to that satellite for a period of time. So, and they do slow scan TV on it. They do all sorts of stuff on it. So it's actually, they use it at different times for different things. The Indonesians are big into the satellite stuff at the moment as well. So they've been getting big into it. AA91, as it's got there, it says in daylight hours, only in daylight hours, because it's got battery issues with it. It's a little bit, it totally died there for a bit, but they were able to resurrect it. They had the other ones that the US had, they all died. And this one, they were able to actually resurrect and get some sort of use out of it. I think it only has like a 4-minute or 5-minute window now that'll actually work. So you could, at least it's usable, but you could imagine over the US with the amount of people that are there want to use satellites, it'd be bedlam. So as it's got the LELEXat intermittently active, it's actually started to become, I found out that just recently it's becoming more active now. So it's just one to probably keep an eye on. I've got to get back up and running and listen to it a little bit more to see how it's going. AO27 is a bit of a funny one. It's gone through similar sort of thing as AO7. It went through a stage where it died, or they thought it died. Now all of a sudden it works, and they've been able to get it up and running. But it'll only work in the Northern Hemisphere. The way that because it's to do with sunlight onto the actual spacecraft for the satellite, that they've been able to resurrect it enough that it can get enough power and it will work for a period of time there as well. So it's a bit of a, from an FM point of view, there's not too many to pick from. The ISS is probably it's a good one there with it, and I think I've done a bit of a boo-boo on that one too, because I'm pretty sure it was 70 centimeters up and 2 meters down. We'll find out. I'm pretty sure I've just looked at that now, and I think I've stuffed that one up. Next slide. We'll find out right here. This is a good source. This the guy over in the States, Clint Bradford, K6 LCS. He does a lot of FM satellite presentations, bucket loads of them, over in the US, getting people up and going, goes to different events, getting people out there to use the satellites portable, not just at home, portable, trying to get people outside portable with it all. So he gives this nice little setup that you can program your radio to make it easier for you to do the actual pass. So as he's got there, the channel numbers are here nor there sort of thing, but at least if you have them all in separate channels, then you can just sort of work your way through them. So SO50, the top one there, which I'd already sort of spoken about earlier, you've got the transmit frequency, 145, 850, you can set that, and it's the same across the whole lot. Then you'll see the receive frequency. We've got a whole heap of different ones. So we've got 805, it starts at 805, 800, 795, 790, and 785. Thing with this satellite, with a lot of them now, they've got tone access like a repeater. So they've got tone access on the transmit. So unless you get that tone going in, you're not going to get any audio go through it. So the same as just to reduce interference, because there has the previous satellites that were there that had no tones on them. They got absolutely bombarded and they would cause all sorts of trouble, and you would find that the satellite would die. The poor battery has its life and that's it, it goes. And that was probably half the drama with a lot of the satellites earlier on. As time has gone on, as there's more RF getting around the place, cheaper radios and the like, getting into countries that mightn't have the same sort of licensing type arrangements for getting a hold of equipment. And yeah, it becomes very hard in that way. So what they did is they did the tone frequency. This one, SO50, has a timer. So you actually have to send up one tone at one point at the start of the pass to get the timer to start. Then when you go to use the actual repeater side of it on its own, you do another tone. So it's making it so it turns itself off, so it can then conserve its battery and conserve other power and only using it for what it needs. So you'll see there in the middle, there's a 74.4 hertz tone. With that, that's the one that actually gives the timer. So that starts that 10-minute timer for transmissions in, for them to go through, as long as you've got the other tone, which is 67 hertz there. So there's a little, that's why having the memory channels is the best thing to do. Doing those memory channels saves so much mucking around with that. For me, what I do is I use two radios. So you could go for the Baofangs and all that sort of stuff, go those cheap ones, go use one on 2 meters, one on 70 centimeters, and you'll be able to hear yourself coming back from the satellite. It's nice and easy, cheap, very cheap. You could get away with it probably for $100 for the 2 radios. So it's pretty good. With that, you can, if you're lucky enough, you did have a radio that did do both, you could put it all in the one radio and have it all there. So as I had with AO91, when in sunlight, it's got other information about the other FM satellites as well. ISS there. As I said, I think I did my boo-boo, which was, as you can see it there, I think it was, yeah, with the, or I did, I mightn't have stuffed it. I thought I did, but the uplink on 2, downlink on 70. So similar sort of scenario where you got to run through those frequencies. But I can't harp on enough about his website. Really good information, has a lot of good stuff in there. I pulled a lot of stuff over my time from that source, also a few other sources as well, which I'll give at the end as well. All right, so the basics. Already spoken about a little bit. There's the old Baofeng and all that off to the left-hand side. Pretty good. Look, you'd be surprised. They do work fairly well. I should have brought... All right. Well, one of them. We've got a couple of radios there. They're the radios that I use. One's a Waxon or Oshon or whatever you want to call it, and the other one's a Puxing. So this one here is actually on that right-hand side is actually the Puxing. It's a 70 centimeter only. That's it. Does 70 centimeters only. Great. Does about 4 watts output. Works really well. The other one is dual band. So able to get away with, you know, doing a little bit there as well. So the best thing for the satellites, because it's crossband, you really need to, it's best if you can hear yourself coming back from that satellite. Then you know that you're getting into it. And you know that you're not actually going over the top of someone else. Because it's like like I said, it's like a repeater, same thing. Whoever gets in there and has just got that little bit more extra power or little bit of extra gain on their antenna to get into the actual repeater they'll get heard over the other people. So you've got to be mindful. If you can't hear it, don't start transmitting up to it. It is probably the biggest thing. Don't do that. So you'll probably get away with it here in Australia, but overseas, in the US, in Europe, they get real cranky about it. Really, really cranky about it. I've seen some interesting remarks there for it. The middle one, the Kenwood, that's probably the I suppose the gold-plated solution. Will do full crossband with that one. Works really well. If you can get a hold of one of those, you're very lucky with one of those ones there. Also does the APRS with those as well. So you can do everything all out of the one package if you want. Antenna wise, I've got a few antennas up there, different ones, homebrew ones that are there. Everybody's probably seen, I suppose, if I move out of the way a little bit and got the antennas off to the side. With the antenna over here, nice little homebrew one, which is a Moxon one. And then it's got an open sleeve, actual 70 centimeter elements to it. So it works well. So you've got one feed point if you want. The one in the middle is your classic arrow antenna that people probably would have seen and heard about. Got the 2 separate feed points, which is good if you've got 2 radios. Works really well in that way, that you don't need a a duplexer to split it for if you want to, if you've got a single input one where you get and you've got two radios, you've got to split it somehow. Whereas that one is the opposite way. So if you want it to go into one radio, then you're going to have your duplexer. The one at the very end is a elk antenna, works same sort of deal as the other one feed point for 2 and 70. Works, it's not too bad. I find it a little bit heavier to try and hold around for doing satellite passes, but it's actually a lot simpler to put together. So, but it has got a little bit more weight to it. So that one's made in the US as well, same as the Arrow antenna. It's pretty good for those, but to try and get some of those in the country, it's a bit average. All right. As I've got there with the full duplex, recommended 2 elements, roughly for 2 meters, 5 for 70. Look, you can get away with 3. You can get away with 3. I have done it there before. It's still doable. It's still well and truly doable. The one in the bottom left-hand corner is actually, they call an IO antenna. So it's like, it's basically like a quad. So it's a quad element. So but it's fed a little bit differently there with it. And I know people that have used those and had very good success with them. I'm very surprised. So I haven't used one myself, but it's another simple antenna that can be built. The one at the end that I showed with the Moxon, it was actually all done out of welding rod, aluminium welding rod. So, and electrical conduit and electrical clips as well there that you use for your conduit. So it's pretty easy to get from the local green store here in Australia. All right, for the next one's the software. Like everybody, if you want to use it at home, there's ones for Windows. If you want to use your mobile phone for either your Apple or your Android, there is flavors for everybody. Even Linux. There's some good ones there as well. It's fairly easy to get a hold of stuff now. It's so easy. The online stuff, you can go to the AMSAT North America one, nice and easy. All you got to do is put your locator in, all done, and it'll give you all the pass predictions. So for the Windows, SAT-PC 32 is the original and been around for a long time. A lot of people swear by it. With that one, nice and easy, reasonably basic to use, not too bad. The AMSAT Droid, I put it into the Windows area because it was just fitted there, I thought, more so. That's a nice free one, and that's done by AMSAT NA as well. So North America, they do it as well with that one. They look after that. It's a fairly simple one. Off to the right-hand side of your screen there, the very furthest right one, it's got AMSAT Droid free. That's the sort of screen that you'll get. There's also another screen where it will give you like a picture of the world, and it'll show you where it is and the little footprint as well. So if you've got a nice tablet, you know, 10-inch tablet or 7-inch tablet, you could have a nice screen there with you and looking at it that way. So it'd be pretty good. The one next door to the AMSAT Droid free one, that's the iOS one. That's the GoSat Watch. So that's the sort of information that you might see on the screen as well. The next one across, the one in the middle-ish is your SAT-PC 32 screen. And the one off to the left-hand side, the far left, is Orbital. That's a free one as well. That's actually a free one. Does have rotator control and all sorts of stuff, the same as SAT-PC 32. More for home use than for out in the field. then there. Same as the Mac ones. You got Mac Doppler. Their satellite tracker, that's another one, is interesting for the Mac side. I found one just in the last probably month that had come up on the North American groups, which is satellite tracking. It's actually a Windows app one. So it's on through your Windows app. So if you go through Windows for either 10 or 11, go through the App Store there. It's actually in there, and you can. It's in there. Same thing, has rotator control, all sorts of stuff in there. It's got a fair amount, but you can get it for free. Doesn't get the rotator control, but for the general stuff, it's pretty good in the free manner. I think it's only like $6 or something, I think, for the full version. So it's pretty reasonable. If you don't like any of that, you're a Linux person, you've got gpredict. It does go across all flavors. So there is, does work on the Mac, does work on Windows and Linux. So it does work across all of them. Yep, has rotator control, everything, all that. That's another free one as well. So there's a lot of good stuff there, free. So, all right, enough of that. So you've got two ways you can go. You can go the left-hand side. You can do that out in the backyard or go out portable and do it that way. I don't like a tripod, but a lot of people use tripods when they go out. I prefer to not, because then I can move around and get between trees and everything to be able to do my pass. So I don't like being stuck in a spot, and I don't really want to be dragging around a tripod and an antenna and everything else with it. So, or you can go the gold plated. The one there on that right-hand side, I think it's, I can't remember his call sign now, but I've got it at the end of the presentation there. Got a fair setup with that. He's only just updated that recently. All computer controlled, everything, the whole lot, the whole shoot and match, including the antennas, which are below where the actual on that right-hand side. So that's his antennas and that's his radios on the inside that he's using. So he has, so it's pretty impressive. Awards. I think, some people like chasing awards and all sorts of stuff like that, or it gives you a, I don't know, something to strive for. These ones that I've got here are all just from slow scan TV. So from a receiving point of view. So these are just from the receiving point of view with it all. So shortwave listener jumps on, downloads slow scan TV from the space station. There's been, over the years, there's been all sorts of other satellites that have been put up there that are transmitting slow scan TV as well. And you get an image, you send it off to them, and they'll send you a card. So there's a lot there. There's a lot there that you can pick from. These are fairly sort of recent ones. Was it Expedition 66 there, which was at the end of December 2021. So not too bad, not too long ago. That bottom right-hand one, that there is all the pictures that I received. They're all my own pictures that I put into a standard template with it all. So it all came, so I put them all into that to then make my own little piece of memorabilia, I suppose, for myself. So I try very hard to get a good pictures, and you'll be happy to know it was all done on a vertical. So your collinear vertical, not a high gain one, a better medium gain one. Though all those pictures were just done with that. So it's very doable from home with very basic setup. The other one at the Indonesian one, like I said, the Indonesians are getting big into the satellite stuff of recent as well. So they've got their own little award system there, which is for different things and for different satellites. So either receiving or transmitting as well. So plenty to pick from. All right, just to, I suppose, finish it up a little bit. That's where I got a lot of the information from. That's where I've gathered a lot of information from my time using satellites. So probably the top one with Clint, he's been one that he has got, there is a bucket load of information there. He continually updates it. He's happy to do, Zoom presentations, all sorts of stuff like that. Very keen to get people involved with it all. KA7FVV, Scott, that was the one where I showed the picture of the space station type arrangement with all his radio system and the antennas and all that, the gold-plated solution for it all. That's he set up. His website is absolutely brilliant as well. He goes through a lot of the SSB satellites, a lot of the other digital satellites, and he updates that fairly regularly too. So he's a really good source of information. AMSAT UK is a good one, has a lot of good information there. Same as the North American one. They're not too bad. It's a little bit hard to find information sometimes on their website. It's a bit clunky, but you can find it. I've got the $4 satellite antenna up there. It's very similar to the Moxon type arrangement. It's just so you can just use aluminium welding rod and a piece of wood and screws and just feed it with coax, done. So it's fairly simple. But all these ones on here, I've got links. There's actually links to those web pages there. So I do have a PDF of this presentation that I can post up or can be posted on the website. Yep. So you can actually grab it off of there. It'll have all the links there ready to go there for you. I did actually I tested every link today just to make sure that they did work. I suppose with AREG, you've been doing a lot of fox hunting, using tape measure antennas for your fox hunting. You'd be surprised, even that 2 meter one, if it's actually been tuned up, or if it's been cut right, around about the 146 mark, it will work on 435 really well. That will actually be good. You might be surprised. So you could use it for both. It does have a bit of a skewed pattern on 70 centimeters. It's a bit funny with it, but it does work. You'll be surprised, it will work. And if you're only using it for a downlink, you might find it's plenty okay. So, but that do-it-yourself tape measure one is an interesting one. It's 3D printing and all sorts of stuff there for it. All right, to the end. That was the pass that's happening tonight. Local time here at 9:51 local in Adelaide. So, any questions, I suppose? We'll go through it.
Yeah, thanks, Adam, very much for coming in. And I think it's proved again that AREG can put on some very good presentations, both at the technical level and also a very technical subject made simple. And I think it's very much appreciated, particularly with the Artemis launch this week, that people have been following. And also I'd like to thank you because you've come in on the back of a very big work function last night. So, so I hope everybody appreciates Adam's commitment here. And I also did notice a number of the heads in the audience snapping up when you mentioned the $4 antenna. So a couple of the questions I've got pertains to working portable. Have you had any information or acknowledgement that maybe portable operation could be incorporated for satellites in SOTA or parks yet?
Well, they are. They're actually included in SOTA and parks. So any of the contacts, if you go out to a SOTA summit, I've actually qualified a SOTA summit on satellite only. So Mind you, it was a fun job to do it because I had to get out there to the location, to the hill at the right time for the satellite pass that I needed. But I got there and got the 4 contacts, but it was over 2 passes. So I had a 90-minute breather between, and got my other couple of contacts that I needed to get to my 4 contacts to qualify the SOTA Summit. I haven't tried it yet for any park activations, but they are legal contacts to do in park activations.
Thank you very much. And are you seeing any uptake of digital modes into these passes yet?
Digital, there's not really. There was a
Other
while.
than CW.
I was going to say there was early on. They did do some trials with D-Star. There was a satellite that they did do D-Star trials with. I haven't heard anything to do with DMR, if there's anything like that going up. The only digital stuff has really been, your CW, your slow scan TV, and that's about it. There's not really much else in the digital world. I think on the geostationary one, they have been doing FT8, I think, or something along that line. They've been doing that from what I've seen, because it's a nice narrow band. But yeah, you've got to have stuff that's very, very set on its frequency.
And we've just had a comment that FreeDV could be very worthwhile to be using on some of these satellites. And that's something that we could probably look into as well. Yeah, on the SSB birds. And the only other thing, I noticed there's quite a lot of activity and a lot of education resources and groups based in Europe and the US. For the Australian-based amateurs, are any of our national bodies, WIA or RASA or universities, taking an interest in this? And what's the future hold for that?
With that, there is no. I think the WIA doesn't do anything. I don't know if RASA are at all doing anything. There is AMSAT VK, but they're just an organisation of people that like playing with satellites. They do. I don't even know if they have a website anymore. They did have a groups.io group there, but that's about it. It's been fairly quiet, but there is on Facebook. There is a. I'm pretty sure it's a VK one there. I'd have to have a look on my thing. I didn't put that in there. It's probably something I might have to add for my next presentation.
Sure.
With that, but there is on Facebook. I know there is a group there for the VK side with it all.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'll hand it back to you guys to any questions from the wider audience.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, do we have any questions from the floor here in the hall first? Yep. Brilliant.
I just would be interested to hear how congested are those small channels are. In Australia, maybe not much of a problem, but I can imagine in Europe, there would be hundreds of them trying to get through, and there's sort of a bit of a fight who gets first.
Oh yeah, there is quite a fight. Like I said, the Americans and over in Europe, it can get pretty feisty. I suppose it's no different to HF as well. You know, when you're on HF, it's no different with the V8, especially with the FM birds. It's because it's, you know, whoever gets in the most is going to be heard. So it can be quite feisty at times with it. So, but no, look, it's here we're very lucky because they're not busy at all. So you can actually have a bit of a chat. Over my years that I've done it, you can have a chat. You can have a chat with people. So,
okay, do we have any other questions here in the hall?
Netiquette, or what would you call it? Is when you make a contact, are you expected to be just exchanging a S value and then basically surrender the channel to the next person, or how does it work on satellite?
It doesn't. Yeah, it's pretty well just an S value and that's it. Over in the US and Europe, they give out grid squares.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people that are grid square chasers,
Mhm.
and that's why they do it. They go out and they'll actually rove. They'll do roving for grid squares, go out into different grid squares. So that's why I say it's a big, over in Europe and the US, they're massive over there, that people will know when they're going out to a special grid square that's not activated very often.
Okay, no worries. Thank you, Matt. Is there anybody on Zoom with any questions? Okay, Peter, VK5DMR, do you have a question? Unmute and away you go.
G'day, Adam. How you doing?
Not too bad. How are you there, Pete?
Good, good. I can remember when I was up in, excuse me, southeast Queensland. I was heavily into satellites up there, and just to let people know that yeah, AO7, an exceptional bird. It's as you said, come back to life. And if the satellite went up the east coast of Australia, you could. We had a couple of guys in Perth and a couple of guys in New Zealand, as well as the ones from South Australia, Victoria, New South Wales, and Queensland. So we'd get on and we'd just do a round table conference. He didn't have long to speak, as you've stated, and you'd basically say g'day and hand it on to the next one, onto that. And a couple of the other sideband satellites, I used to send slow scan TV pictures up, which you've attested to. And one of my great ones was a picture of two cane toads with a picture of Sydney in the background that I used to send to the VK2s. So you can have some great fun on satellites there. Thanks for the talk, Adam.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Pete.
No worries. Just one comment that we've just seen come in as well. Tim 5AB mentions that 5DG has actually been inactivated all 45 VK3 national parks as part of the Victorian National Parks program.
Yeah, the Keith Roger.
That's the one.
Yes, the Keith Roger one. Yeah, it was only done recently that he finalised it all. I thought that was a pretty good effort.
That's hardcore. Okay, do we have any other final questions? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up for this evening. No worries. Thank you very much, Adam, for coming.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
And
That's good.
there's a lot of people on Zoom at the end of it. I just looked at, and I think we've got well over probably 25 people there. So a lot of our members are on Zoom tonight. So fantastic effort. Thanks again. And good night, everybody from the Amateur Radio Experimenters group.
Thanks a lot.